I'd like to start from the very beginning and ask you about your childhood in Newnan, Georgia. What was that like?
Man, we're going way back. Um, it was great. So I was actually I spent uh ages 3 to 11. I was in a little town in Alabama and a little town called Selma, Alabama. And when I was 11, I moved to Newnan with my mom, which is the town that she grew up in. And Newnan is just it's a very idyllic, very picturesque, small, quaint southern town. It's actually, now there's so much film industry that goes on in Georgia. Newnan gets used a lot as the backdrop if they need like a quaint town with a beautiful, picturesque court square and, the little shops all around it. Newnan gets chosen a lot for that. One of my favorite scenes that it's used in is in the movie Zombieland. I don't know. Are you familiar with
Yeah,
that movie? Have you seen the
yeah,
movie?
yeah. I've seen it. Yeah.
There's a scene, I don't even remember. It's like a zombie, part of the zombie apocalypse, and they're
Hmm.
going through this downtown. It's this beautiful little quaint downtown, and that's Noonan. And I always thought that was
Wow.
that's one of my favorite, kind of a funny way that Noonan got used. But yeah, it's great. It's probably 45 miles south of Atlanta,
Hmm.
um, the capital of Georgia, huge town, and it somehow, as Atlanta's continued to expand outward, Noonan has maintained this kind of small town charm. Um, so yeah, it's a special place. I still have a lot of family that lives there. I'll probably go visit my sister there in a few weeks, but um, yeah, I loved it. I met one of my closest friends I met immediately when I moved to Noonan. Um, we were in the same homeroom class in the sixth grade and had all the same classes together, and we became fast friends and both started playing guitar that year. So I got a guitar for Christmas, my first guitar, and he got a guitar about 4 months later. His name is Adam Wright, and if you're not familiar with him, he's a brilliant singer, songwriter, guitar player, and we had this friendship that was formed then around many shared interests, but one was our growing love of music. And I remember a lot of my time in Noonan spent with Adam and with a couple of other guys that I was playing in a high school band with, just, you know, falling in love with music, falling in love with being in a band, being part of the team, creating this sound that was bigger, than what any of us could do on our own, kind of riding the wave of music. So yeah, it was a great place to grow up, and I have great memories of falling in love with music there and basically learning how to play in bands.
Wow. So you kind of already answered my next question. I was wondering if music was a big part of your upbringing and how you first approached it. But
Yeah, it wasn't really there wasn't really anybody in my family that played music. Music fans for sure. My dad actually played drums, and I remember as a small kid going to visit his childhood home, and they had his old drum kit up there. But as far as I knew, nobody was really, playing music. Um, I just always kind of gravitated toward it. I
okay.
just um, always loved it, and really, I have this, you know, if there's something I get into, I get really into it. And I remember being, 10, 11 years old and getting really interested in guitar. And that was all I, you know, thought about, all I wanted. And I got, my grandparents got me a guitar from the Noonan pawn shop that Christmas. And, Noonan was such a small town. There wasn't really, there's actually a great music teacher there now who does a lot in the community. But at the time, there wasn't even really anywhere to take lessons or, um, or formally learn how to play. So my granddad had a friend named Hubert Brown, and Hubert was he was older. He was probably, 65, 70 when I knew him. And it's kind of a tragic story. He had gone to Nashville as a young man and tried to make it as a songwriter and as an artist. And I think um, alcohol, drugs got the better of him. He ended up having to move back to Newnan, and he lived in a little trailer on his brother's property there. But my granddad knew him. And so I would go over there to Hubert's trailer about once a month, and he would teach me some guitar chords and teach me some old songs. And so that's how I learned. And so I was learning that way. And then my friend Adam was learning through somebody else. And so we would get together and I'd go, oh, here, I just learned the, C chord. I just learned the whatever. And so, yeah, so I just kind of learned very informally all along the way. And then eventually when I got to college, I took a couple of guitar classes in college. I was an English major in college, but because I've always been, drawn to writing. That's always been my primary love. But I took some guitar classes while I was there, and that helped solidify some stuff that I already knew. But yeah, I really latched on to music at an early age, and it's been great, but there wasn't really, I didn't really have a model for what a working musician looked like, or what a musician in general looked like. It was kind of unique.
Um, Speaking of music, what do you think attract? I don't know if you can verbalize this, but I was wondering what it is about music that you get out of, or making music that you get out of, that you don't necessarily get out of other art forms. If you could put it into words, I don't know. That's
That's
possible.
a really great question. I don't have a lot of experience with other art forms. Um, but I suspect that what other people get out of them, I suspect there's a similar experience. Maybe I could break it down to there's the solitary experience of making music, and that feels I don't know. That feels very spiritual to me. That feels very kind of sacred to me. There's a sense of when I'm by myself and I'm playing, or I'm by myself and I'm writing, or working on music, I feel tapped into something a little bit deeper. And any chance I get to have that feeling of being grounded in something a little deeper is great. um I mean, it's a great stress reliever, sitting around playing guitar. It's a very meditative process. It can be. um and often in the creative process, when I sit down to write, a lot of times I sit down and think, I don't have anything to write about today, or and if I find that if I just show up and see what comes out, I'm a lot of times I'm surprised at what comes out. It's a great way to access emotions that might not be quite as on the surface
Uh-huh.
as maybe we'd like them to be, and not quite as accessible. So that's the solitary part of it. But then one of the great joys of it is the collective experience of making music with other people and sharing that bond with them, and getting on a plane with them that feels uh, really special. Some of my greatest friendships have been people that I've spent long hours making music with, and there's kind of an unspoken bond that is formed that way.
Yeah.
That's with the people you're making music, and then obviously another big part of it is sharing that experience with the people you're playing music for. And the energy of music in a live setting is just, you know, I love it as a music listener. I love being a part of it, but also being the person on the other side of the conversation, the person that's actually getting to create the music is just such a special thing.
Yeah.
And they're all different, you know. At some point, if you're touring a lot and if you're playing a lot and if you do it long enough, it's a little bit of, you're familiar with the movie Groundhog Day?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, where it feels like you're like, okay, this day's the same as the next day. And that can happen on tour where you wake up in a city and you're not quite sure what city it is, and you go from the bus to the stage, back to the bus to the airport, you know. And at some point, I had to find the ability to just be on stage and remember that every one of these nights, every one of these experiences is unique, and this exchange is only going to happen this one time, and really just try to be, just try to be in that moment with that audience. And it's because it's a, it's a special thing. And um, we don't always get the chance to know from stage what songs mean something to individual people in the audience. We don't get to have conversations with everybody, but occasionally we do, and it's always a great reminder of part of why being a musician is so special.
Yeah. Great answer. This is maybe a lighter question. Do you remember what the very first piece of music was that you listened to, and what emotions it elicited in you?
I can remember some of the first records I had as a kid. When I was a kid, it was kind of that transition between records and tapes. It was like, you could still buy records. People were still buying, and you could buy the full album, or you could buy like
So
the
we're
little
talking
single.
like early 80s, late 70s,
Yeah,
or
yeah, like early 80s, yeah.
early 80s? Okay.
Early 80s. Um, so some of the music that I remember, it's funny when I think about it now, some of them were just theme songs to TV shows.
Oh,
Like I was like the Dukes of Hazzard
yeah.
themes, the Good Old Boys by Waylon Jennings. I remember having that record and just playing it, you know, on repeat. Um, there was a TV show called The Greatest American Hero. Do you know that show?
Yes, yes. I think I have
It's
seen
kind of
some
like
of
a
your runs.
he's a superhero, but I don't even really remember the show that much. But he's kind of like he's a superhero, but he's kind of like he's not quite that good at it, kind of bumbling a little bit, but had a really great theme song, and I had that record.
Uh,
Um, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, I Love Rock and Roll was one of those early ones. At some point, I came across it was a tape, and this was, I don't even know if it's legal to do this anymore, but back in the early 80s, if you bought, a carton of cigarettes, they would give you like a gift with them. So somebody's dad that I knew was a big smoker, and he smoked Marlboro cigarettes, and Marlboro gave out this cassette. It's called Marlboro Country Classics. And it was
okay.
just a hodgepodge of just, and I didn't grow up listening to country, but I remember this tape. And I remember it just had, all kinds of stuff. But for some reason, Lee Greenwood, God Bless the USA, I remember that being on there. Um, that was a big one. I mean, my parents grew up, they listened to like, you know, 60s music. They didn't really get into like the psychedelic 60s,
Mm-hmm.
the 60s stuff, but like early 60s stuff, Motown stuff. They listened to a ton of that. So music around the house was usually that. Um, and then probably like everybody else, whatever was on the radio when I was a kid was just like, that was the stuff, man. There was a band called uh Midnight Star. I don't know if you know that band, but I
No.
remember as a kid, I remember hearing this song, and the guy's like speaking through a synthesizer, so it sounds like a robot voice. And I was probably 5 years old when this came on, and I was like blown away. Like I had no idea what I was even hearing. And then eventually, I got into more classic rock and kind of digging into the kind of the history of great classic rock from America, from abroad, wherever. And that kind of that informed, guitar playing, songwriting, production, kind of everything for me.
Nice. I'm trying to following through with that. I was wondering if Italian music, you ever listen to any of that
I
or?
don't, you're going to have to turn me on to some. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know. I don't even know where to start.
Okay, I will.
Uh,
I'll send you some tunes of some of uh, the most revolutionary artists we
yeah.
had that changed Italian music uh, from the stale 50s, 40s, and 60s. There was a big change then, and one in particular changed really the way pop music is written. And I'll send you some of those tunes by him. It is the number one. Well, he's been dead 26, 27 years now. He died at 55, but it just revolutionized Italian pop music. Just
Oh,
well,
cool. What's his name?
Lucio Battisti.
I don't know.
I mean, it's just everyone that came after him just started writing the way Italian music. We listen to Italian music now. It's because he changed it.
He changed it. Yeah.
Changed it
Interesting.
totally. He was influenced by he listened to all kinds of stuff from the UK, from America, when nobody else was doing that. When nobody
Yep.
else was listening to foreign stuff, he was, and it was a natural talent, of course.
Yeah.
So you mix the two together, and the combination was totally
That's cool, man. Yeah, send it. That sounds like something I need to check out.
yeah, and he did progressive rock and a progressive rock album. He wrote progressive. He went down to South America in 73, 74, and came back and wrote a whole album influenced by the sounds that he heard down there.
Yeah.
Well, it was just, and then in 76, he put out an album that was influenced by disco music.
Wow.
And this was early disco, 70s, we're talking 75, 76. So it was like always ahead of the curve, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I'll send you some stuff and see if you like it. I don't know, maybe you will.
That's cool.
So you moved to Nashville in 1996, right?
Yeah,
I did my research.
you did.
Because you wanted to pursue songwriting. So I
Well,
guess that's the place to be to do that.
I, you know,
Did I get that
yes, Nashville is definitely the place to be. One of the places to be as a songwriter. But I really, when I moved there in '96, I moved there to go to college,
wrong? Okay.
and um, it really, I mean, I had been playing music, been writing music, but that really wasn't. It was Nashville was on my radar as a place where a lot of great music was happening. And I was going there primarily to go to college, but also thought, oh, as an added bonus, I'll be in this town where a lot of cool music's going on. But I really did not at the time, did not think music was what I was going to be pursuing. I mean, I knew I loved it, but I really didn't have a blueprint for how you even would go about doing that. I didn't know that, honestly, I didn't even know how anybody got those jobs. I didn't know how it could be a real job. So I just went, and pursued a degree in English and just kind of kept trying to figure out what I was going to do after college. But the whole time I was there, I was always writing. I was always out, seeing bands, seeing songwriters, meeting people in the community, playing in bands, just trying to immerse myself in the town as much as possible. And really, mostly just because I loved it. It was a very inspiring place to be. Um, and after college, I got out and I still wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but I just kind of kept um, music. I kind of kept always doing music, and then doors just started opening. And then I had a few
Very
people
organic.
that I thought, oh, wow, I can see how this actually is a job that you can have. And so I started to um, work a little harder to make that happen. But yeah, when I first moved there, I really I figured I would go to college, figure out what I wanted to do while I was in college, and while I was there, see some great music, and that's as far as
Okay.
I thought about it.
So you never had like a conversation with yourself saying, "Oh, I'm gonna now pursue music professionally and be a songwriter." You never had that conversation, right? Like
Well,
consciously at
I
least.
I think at some point, um, when I got out of college, I I must have had some version of that conversation because I didn't really look for a real job.
Okay.
Real job. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought, all right, I'm going to wait tables, I'm going to do construction, I'm going to do, whatever kind of job I can do on the side while I'm keeping music my main focus. Um, and you know, eventually, I think at some point I did. I kind of stopped and thought, man, I should really get a real job. This is, it's kind of like the Wile E. Coyote cartoons,
Yeah.
where he walks out and he's fine, but then if he ever stops and looks down, he falls.
Well,
I had a moment like that where I stopped and looked down and thought, what am I doing? I got a college degree. I need to figure out how to. So I got a job at a software company just doing technical support. I mean, I didn't have any background in that, but got a job there. And I worked there for about a year, and that was long enough for me to decide, okay, whatever that path is, I'm not doing that. And I quit that job. And I was about 26 then, and that's when I really decided this is music is the full-time pursuit. So I just threw myself into it and, tried to work as much as I could.
and when you did throw yourself into it, did you like ever ask yourself, "Oh, I wonder if I'm ever gonna make it, whatever it is," or like because you were already doing what you love, you felt like, "Oh, I've already made it." Was like,
Probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, at a very basic level, it was, I didn't, I don't think I took the time very often to zoom out very far. Um, I just stayed focused on, well, I got to pay rent this month. I got to work. I got to get this gig. I got this gig. Now I got to learn all these songs. And
yeah,
at the time when I first started playing, I was working primarily as a sideman. So if there was an artist who was hiring a band to go out on tour or a band to, go out and play shows, I was primarily doing that. And I was working as a guitar player, as a bass player, background singer, basically any little door that opened up that I could work in, I would just say yes and do it. And so I think I was so busy in the day to day, you know, meeting people, doing shows, learning songs, playing with this band, going out with this band. I was so busy that um
you
I
didn't
didn't really
rationalize it. You
yeah, I
didn't.
didn't really zoom out too much. It's kind of like being a new parent and the whole time is leading up to being a parent, you're concerned with all the big existential questions about how am I going to, and then you get to be a parent and like the first year is just like, I'm just trying to stay awake long enough to change this diaper. And then I got to get this food and then I got to go the details of it. So I think for the first couple of years, I was so immersed just in trying to, find gigs and keep working. And then at some point, I think I just figured out that is, you know, we kind of get to define what making it means, and I um at some point just decided that if I'm working, then I'm a working musician, and I'm having these great experiences traveling with people I love, seeing the world, playing shows, then I've already made it, and I don't want to miss enjoying that process for worrying about if something that I, don't really have that much control over in the future may or may not happen. So, um, and I didn't really, I wasn't too concerned early on about what form it even took. If I was playing bass, that was fine. If I was playing guitar, If I liked the music a lot, that was great. But sometimes I would go out with bands. I wasn't really nuts about the music, but I knew I would learn something on the gig, and I would meet some people, and
Yeah, yeah,
just kept just kept working.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a great question because I always ask myself too that question. Wow, what's the definition of making it or success? And I will always wonder what people who are in, people like you are, I look at you and I say Park is really successful because, he's a full-blown musician. He plays all over the world and all that. I always wonder what people like you think of success. How do they define it? So I guess that's the great definition, that you get to do what you love full
yeah,
time.
it's a great question. I mean, uh, particularly, transitioning from being a musician, primarily a musician on the road, to what I mostly do now, which is songwriting, producing, and then obviously traveling, with Kevin and with that band. And, um, you know, any day that I get to engage in that creative process of writing songs, recording songs, producing music, um, I just feel like it's a success. And you know, more of those songs will never be heard by the world than will be heard by the world. And so success I can't define it on, you know, what happens when those songs, after I've written those songs and tried to get them to the places, where they can land with artists, or have a spot somewhere. At some point I have to let them go, and just say, man, that was a great day. I wrote a song I really like with people I really enjoyed working with. Um, and um, and I didn't have to dig a ditch anywhere. Like, this is my job. So that feels great, you know.
Yeah. So I guess you already answered this next question, which was, what are some of your fondest memories of your first few years as a professional musician?
Man, um, I'll tell you a few of them. It's funny, I was driving my daughters to school today, and we were talking about traveling, and they were talking about, um, uh, they were asking me what are some of my favorite places that I've been. And I would say some of my favorite memories would be tied to some of those travels. One of the first guys that I toured with, professionally, I was playing lead guitar. He was a guy named Chris DeCroce. He is a, singer-songwriter, and we did a tour in the States, and that was my first cross-country tour in the States. We, toured in a Ford Econoline van, and it was glorious. But after that, we did a USO. Are you familiar with the USO?
No.
The USO it's an organization. I think it stands for United Services Organization. I'm gonna have to look that up because I don't want to get it wrong. But basically, they organize and provide entertainment for American troops stationed all
Oh,
over.
all over the
So,
world.
yeah.
Okay.
And so we did a USO tour to the Middle East, and this would have been probably early 2001. And we went to, you know, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Bahrain and Dubai, and places that I would never, had never thought about going. And, um,
Hmm.
so I remember those,
Yeah.
recently playing, doing a concert with Kevin and Modern West at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. Is a, that's a great memory. Um, I got to play with an artist named Jody Messina, she's a really great country artist. Had a bunch of great songs, and is still touring and doing well. But we did a 4th of July celebration in Washington, D.C. on the Capitol lawn, and Stevie Wonder was on the show. And
Oh,
it's amazing, just really, we did it was a couple of us from the band, and we had an orchestra behind us. You mentioned the Kevin show that we did in 𝘼𝙢𝙚𝙧𝙤𝙘𝙖
Yeah,
um, at
on
the
the Fourth
castle
of July.
with
Yeah.
the orchestra behind us. That was great. Um, God, they could just,
Didn't you guys also do an what's the name of the OSO
USO.
USO in Germany
We
also
did, yeah,
in
we
20,
did. We were over there. We were over there doing a longer tour, and
yeah,
we
in
were
Germany, I
able to fit
remember.
in
Now I
a
remember.
couple of USO shows. Yeah, and they're always really cool. It's always just service people, U.S. service people and their families, and they're just really powerful, and just a just a small way that for us to say thank you for what they're doing, and
Of course.
so far away from home, and um, yeah, so those are always fun.
Yeah. So, being you that you are a songwriter, I'm wondering what prompts you to sit down and start writing a piece of music or lyrics, or do you need to be inspired by something, or is it more like a job where now today I'm gonna sit down and write?
Yeah,
And
for me, it's I kind of have to do the latter. I mean, there are some people I think that can just live their life, and then inspiration will strike them, and then they sit down and write a song. And for me, I have to. I always say that inspiration, you know, inspiration will find me if I make myself really easy to find. So for me, I have to just make it, you know, a disciplined act of, okay, now I'm sitting down, I'm showing up. I have no idea what I'm writing about. I don't know what I'm doing, but if I show up and I uh, put the time in and put the effort in, it may not happen that day, but if I keep priming the pump and
Mm,
keep showing up, then eventually, it'll show up. So
yeah,
I've just had to approach it that way. That I find that, you know, it sounds counterintuitive, but the more I'm writing, the more consistently I'm writing, the more consistently I'm having ideas, and I'm just kind of better at it. I'm just in the flow of it.
yeah,
Um, but it works, people do it all kinds of different ways, but that's definitely been, kind of approach it like a bit of a appointment.
and I will also. In what way do you think the music industry has changed since you first stepped into it, or if it has, or maybe it hasn't, or what's your point of view?
I mean, I think there's always, there, I think throughout the history of the music business, there have been technological changes that have scared the establishment
Hmm.
and kind of shaken up the music business. Anything from recorded music to radio to internet streaming to music streaming services to, CD burners to tape. They're all, anytime technology uh, comes up with a way for people to more easily access music, uh, the business people of music get a little bit nervous and try to figure it out. So there's always those changes happening. I mean, streaming has has had an enormous effect on the music business, and there have been positive and negative aspects to that. As a songwriter, there are certainly negative aspects because the the deals that the streaming services have made with the songwriters and the owners of the copyright have really not seemed to have been very fair deals. The people who are with the record companies and the record labels, those deals seem to be a little bit more fair and more sustainable. But as a songwriter, the way streaming services pay out, it's pretty dismal. Um, on the other hand, streaming services are amazing. I mean, the ability to have access to the music that we have access to walking around with a little thing we carry in our pocket is incredible, and that's it's hard to say that that is a negative thing. So I think at the end of the day, with all that, what hasn't changed is that a great song performed passionately to people is always where it's going to matter the most, I think. I mean, I think at the end of the day, musicians need to be playing music to live people. There needs to be that exchange happening, and that seems to be where a lot of the magic is.
That connection that can only happen in a
Yeah,
live situation, right? Yeah.
yeah.
And now you've been, how long is it? Maybe 20 years you've been a member of Kevin's band, Modern West? Has it been
I
20
think so. I mean, that's crazy to
years?
think that it's been that long, but yeah, it's been 20 years. They
And,
would
oh,
they
sorry.
had been a band for about a year um when I first joined them. I think they had done, I don't know, one or two shows.
Oh,
There were
okay.
one or two shows that I didn't do with them, and then I think I joined on the third show and have been doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my next question was this, could you walk me through how that happened for you? You mean
yeah, I'll
joining the
connect the
band?
dots. I'll try to connect the dots succinctly. So Kevin and John Koyman had known each other forever and had a band together back in the 80s,
Robin.
along with Blair. Yeah, right, that along with Blair Forward, our bass player, and
Yeah.
that band dissolved. Kevin got busy with his other job, and so that band dissolved. And when Kevin wanted to put a band back together, 20 something years ago, he called John and said, John, I'd love to put a band together. And I think, mainly what Kevin wanted to do was, when he was on location for a movie, he wanted the camaraderie. We talked about that earlier, the camaraderie of playing music with people and that shared experience. And then he just wanted a way to interact with, the people in the community. Oh, maybe we'll go to a, local bar and do a show there, um and that'll be fun. So it kind of started there. And so John said, yeah, I know some guys. So he called Teddy Morgan, who Teddy had lived in Tucson at the same time as John and Blair, and Larry, the drummer.
Yeah.
And so that was the original band. And they had a steel player, pedal steel player. Oh, did he play? I think he played fiddle and maybe steel. I can't remember. He did a couple of shows. So they did two shows like that. And then they decided they wanted another guitar player and somebody that could sing harmonies. And Teddy at this point was living in Nashville, and
Oh,
he and I had worked together in different bands and in the studio, and just, lived in the same neighborhood and had a good friendship and good working relationship going. So he asked me to come out and do a show. And I'll never forget, I was touring with a different band at the time, and that band we had a couple of weeks off. So this show that Teddy asked me to do with Kevin just fit right in the cracks of it. It was perfect. So
yeah.
I flew out to Kevin's. Let's say the show was on a Saturday. I probably flew out to Kevin's on a Tuesday. And what a weird experience, to go. Uh, I mean, I'm used to playing with bands where, all right, we're going to stay in a hotel and then we'll go to this rehearsal room. We'll rehearse for 3 hours and everybody go back to the hotel and we'll see. And this was like, it was like being in a high school band again. All the great parts of it. I was like, no, we're going to go to Kevin's house. We're going to stay there. We're cooking out. We're just set up in his living room. We're just playing. And it was, I think I didn't realize it at the time, but I had lost some of the joy of playing music and some of the joy of that experience, that camaraderie, that just excitement about seeing things come together. And so that struck me immediately, that this band was different and Kevin was different. He's so collaborative. He just, I mean, I showed up and I think I'd been there a day and he just said, "Hey, if you got any songs you think would be good for the band, just, send them to me." And that's I don't think he knew how different that was to how things usually work, and he's
Mhm.
kind of just he had just kind of let a good idea come from anywhere, including the new guy who just showed up. And so that really meant a lot to me, and that showed me that this was going to be a different thing. So anyway, I did the show with them, flew back home, and I remember John Koinman called me about 2 days later, and um, he said, "Man, that show went great. We'd love for you to do all our shows." And here I am, I've got this other gig, but I'm thinking, man, this Kevin thing's really cool. This could be a really good thing. And I said, "John, I'd love to. What do you have going on?" And he said, "Oh, we don't have any shows, but if we ever do, we'd love for you to do them." And I thought, oh man, so it's not even really a job. It's just like,
Yeah,
but I liked it so much. And I just thought, man,
takes
if
off
this thing goes at all, I'm going to be sad if I miss the boat. So I quit the other gig and just hoped
on a hope.
that Modern West would work enough to, and 20 years later, still working. So,
Here you
but
are.
I'll never forget. I said, "God, yeah, what else you got?" And he said, "Oh, no, we don't have anything, but
I think.
yeah, but join us." So, yeah.
Do you recall what your first, I guess you already answered this, but the very first time meeting you had with Kevin, what was that like? I mean, was it,
Um,
oh, what was it like?
I mean, it's a little disarming because, I don't really get starstruck, but it's a little disarming. He's Kevin that I grew up, seeing on the screen, but he's just so warm and genuine. And I always tell people, people ask, "What's Kevin like?" And I always say, he's exactly the person that you hope he is from
Mm.
watching all his movies. Like, he's exactly that guy. He's loyal, he's funny, he's warm, um, he's highly intelligent, um, very eloquent. He's a hard worker. But my first experience was just it was awesome. I mean, it was just hanging out in his house with five other guys playing music and just having fun. We were like kids. It was as much like a high school band experience as anything I've ever done. And I mean that in all the best possible ways. The excitement, the camaraderie, the fun, um, yeah, all of it.
What's
And
the,
he's
oh,
continued to
sorry.
be that guy. He's continued to be that guy, just very generous and very, his always has an open door. And it's um, been a great friendship.
What's the, mm, I don't know if this is yeah, what's the fondest memories you have of hanging out and talking or just, being friends with Kevin that will always stick with you? And what do you think you brought into his life? We may know, what he brought into your life, but what do you think you brought, to his life
Those are
also?
two really great questions. You know, we've had some great experiences as a band having these extended rehearsal weeks, stays at his place in California. And we've had a few of them where we've gone out to Aspen and stayed at his place out there, which is just a magical spot. Um, I don't really have one experience that stands out. I think I just have a lot of great memories of just sitting around, you know, shooting the breeze, playing guitar, early in the morning, late at night, on the sets of his movies, in his house, by the ocean, on the beach, just wherever we are in the world. We always kind of come back to the five of us, the six of us, if the fiddle players there, just sitting around together in a circle, just playing and singing. And I think um, it's just that really, there have been some amazing, moments, but I think the simplest is probably the one that'll stick with me, which is just that shared circle. And as far as what I've brought to his life, that will be a good question for him, although I'd be scared of the answer. But I think honestly, you know, hopefully camaraderie. I think there's a bond in the band that is it's really special. I mean, those guys all feel like family. Um, I think Kevin knows that, you know, we work together, we make music together, but I think that he knows that above all, we all care about him and we all just appreciate him as a friend. And that's so hopefully friendship, some inspiration in the form of music. I know that that's happened, and I know there have been, um, you know, the joy of collaborating on songs together, and hopefully, um, expressing things that we both feel, or that everybody in the band feels, and finding ways to put that to words and put that to music. That's a special thing. So,
Oh yeah,
I mean, hopefully I've been able to facilitate in some of that, and just, you know, give more to him than I ask of him.
nice. Is the songwriting process different in Modern West than it is in your own band for you? Like, are they?
Um, it's, there's so many ways it can happen in Modern West, and I think that makes it unique. Um, I mean, Kevin again lets a good idea come from anywhere. So everybody in the band writes. Everybody in the band, you know, throws songs on the pile. The cool thing about Modern West is we do have a lot of distinct songwriters in the band, and when we write individually, you get a little bit more of a sense of like, oh, this feels more like what this person does as a songwriter, this person does as a songwriter. And then it gets into the Modern West sound and it becomes the band. But there's also these great kind of cross pollinations where, John and I write a song together, or Teddy and I write a song together. John and Teddy write a song together. Blair and John write a song together. Where you get all these different conglomerations. Kevin writing with any of us individually or all of us collectively. So the I think the variety really serves us well. And then also, I mean, having that many songwriters is great because, we throughout the history of the band, we've all had periods where we've been especially prolific and have been putting more songs on the pile than other people. And then we've had times where we've, you know, stepped back and allowed other people to that moment to be theirs. And it's just cool to see how everybody contributes. And I think we've worked hard for that to be a process that's pretty free of ego. We all root for the best song and we all root for each other. So that feels different to me in that band.
Hmm, nice. Yeah, because most bands really break up right after they're born, like,
Yeah.
and it's
They don't
incredible.
last very long. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's incredible you guys have been going for 20 years now, and not one ounce of drama, not one like nothing like that, and it's all in the best interest of the music.
Yeah. And like any family, I mean, we have disagreements, we have whatever, but I think we're always kind to each other. We always handle them civilly, and we always, I just think we all look out for each other, and at the end of the day, we're all very aware that um, in this situation, that we represent Kevin, and we always want to,
Yeah.
make that make that of paramount importance.
Yeah, of course. So you appear in Horizon Chapter One. I remember watching the movie and seeing you know, pop up on the screen, and oh, that's Park. Um, what was that like for you? And does your character like get to have more screen time in future installments, or were you?
Well, it's funny. We joke with Kevin, I don't think any of us except for Matt, our fiddle player, I think he died on screen.
Yeah,
Nobody else has died on screen, so all of us are available for future installments. That's what we keep telling Kevin.
yeah.
We'll see what that lands. Man, that was really cool. And over the course of the years, Kevin has been kind enough to find little spots to
Yeah, you were in Swing Vote as well, remember?
was in Swing Boat, and then one of the most memorable to me is when he was making Hatfields and McCoys. That was at the end of a European tour that we had done. He was flying straight to Romania, and he was just, going by himself. I think he had one other person going with him. And I just said, Kevin, you need some company? Like, do you want me to go? And so he's like, yeah, come on. So I went and hung out in Romania for a couple of weeks while he was filming. And while I was there, they said, oh yeah, we're gonna put you in. So they put me in that, and I got to have a nice little speaking line, which was cool.
Oh yeah, I remember. I remember
But
now.
the coolest part about this one though was that he asked my family to come with me. So my wife Sarah and my two daughters Magnolia and Josephine, we all flew over there. He said, I need a family in this scene. And what are you guys doing next week? And so, the girls got to skip school for a few days, got to fly out to Utah and have this experience, which, you know, I didn't know, because they're long. I mean, you've been on the set, they're long days, they're dusty, people are working hard, you're in,
Hot.
uncomfortable costumes. It's a lot of standing around and waiting, and I think it's cold at night, and sometimes you're working till midnight. And I thought my kids are either going to love this or hate it. And it was so cool to be there and watch them just kind of catch the fever of this process of like, oh, this is cool. Like we get to go to the wardrobe and they have clothes already picked out for us. So we're doing that. And then all the staff, like not the staff, but the crew, hair, makeup, just extra attention with them and really made them feel special. Um, and they got to see that process, and they got to see the whole village that it takes to make a
Yeah.
movie. It's like a traveling circus. And I love that they get to see, hey, there are people doing these jobs. There are people that are living this really creative, kind of nomadic existence that is pretty awesome. And so they got excited about doing that. Yeah, so that was, I mean, that's the coolest thing about that process. Um, and they just kind of got it, man. They just, they were really into it. I've got a great uh, video on my phone when we were filming our scene, where I'm chiseling our name in the
Yeah.
rock and the girls are standing behind me, and you know, Kevin's set up and he's got his monitor set up and he's watching, and he calls me over there to point something out, and Magnolia, my oldest daughter, followed me over there, and she's kind of standing there with her hands on her hips, and she has this really serious look on her face, like it's like me and Kevin and Magnolia all looking at this monitor, and I can just see like the wheels turning, and I can see her taking it all in, um and yeah, that was cool, man. I mean,
Wow.
it's fun for me to do it, but to get to share that with them was really amazing.
Special, right? Wow. Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah.
And last question, what does the road ahead look like for you? Musically, professionally, what do you have lined up in terms of projects that you can share a bit of? And
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm always writing. Um, Sometimes those songs are for specific purposes. Sometimes they're just writing songs, pitching those songs to artists. to record. I'm also really excited about two artists that I'm working with that I'm producing records for. One is an amazingly talented songwriter, singer named 𝘼𝙢𝙬𝙧𝙤𝙬𝙧. And Jada, I've known for years, and we've made some of my favorite music together. And we wrote, I don't know, 15 or 20 songs over the course of last year that all just kind of hung together like a record. And so we started, we're in the process of making that record right now. We're probably halfway through. Jada had a song that we wrote that was featured in Yellowstone. It's a song called "The Killer."
Nice.
And
That's a nice song. Very cool.
thank you very much. And I don't remember what season it was, but that's
I
on.
think
You
it
can
was
try.
number
We did
four,
a
number four or number three. I think it was season three,
okay, cool.
like
But
that.
that's what we did, a Tales from Yellowstone album, and that's on that album. So she and I wrote that song, and Kevin sang with her on that. So we've made a whole record together, which I love it, and I love her.
So that's coming out.
We're about halfway through making it, so we've
Okay.
got probably another couple months working on it, and then the release will probably be sometime next year.
Mhm.
There's another artist that I've worked with that I love, and I actually toured with her. We made her first record together a couple of years ago, and she goes by Pillbox Patty, and she is, I mean, so it's powerful, man. It's like really raw, really honest, really fun. Um, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, it's like equal parts, you know, she grew up listening to like early 90s hip hop and singer-songwriters, and it's just all these influences and all these cool things coming together. And I love working on that stuff. I never know sonically where we're going. She's a brilliant writer. And we've done some really fun stuff together over the years. So we started working on a record last year that we will start releasing songs from that at the beginning of 2025, and the songs will roll out once a month, and then the whole record will come. So those are the two things in the near future, and then there's always little things that are in various stages of development, but mostly those two. And then hopefully, man, there's talk of a Modern West tour in January.
Nice.
um there are yeah, so there's more.
US, only US dates.
I think it's US stuff, but I have not heard. I think we were going to do it this fall, and then Kevin's schedule changed, and so we pushed it off to the beginning of the year. So yeah, hopefully I'll see. I'm flying out to Kevin's Sunday, so hopefully when I'm out there I'll get a few more details.
Yeah, nice. But you guys do have a show coming up, right? Isn't that
Yeah,
next
we're
week?
playing Palm Springs a week
Oh,
from Sunday. We're playing in Palm Springs. Yeah.
yeah, cool. Um, well, I lied. This was not the last question. This is the coming up is the last question. What would you tell your young self uh about, where life would take you, and what would you tell your future self about your present day life? Would you advise your two selves, one from the past and one from the future, about anything? Just,
I mean,
you tell
honestly,
them.
the first thing that pops into my brain, and I hope I could give this advice to my former self and my future self, is just trust the process. We talked about that a little bit before we started recording, but
Yeah.
if you have a passion, if you have an interest, keep showing up for it. Keep looking for the tiny ways little doors are opening in your life that it may not be exactly the door you thought you were looking for, but just stay aware of what those are, and be grateful for those and take advantage of those opportunities when they show up. And trust your own process, trust your own internal rudder, trust your own creative process and just continue to show up.
Yeah, that's the great message to end this on. So, Park, thank you so much for your time. I know you're
Yeah,
very
man.
busy, and I don't want to hold you up any more than I already have. So,
Well,
uh,
it's great, man. I'm glad we got to connect, and I loved seeing you out in California, and hope we see you down the road
thank
sometime.
thank you so much. Likewise, I mean, I had a tremendous time, getting to meet you in person and all the other guys from the band and interact there. And the show was terrific, by the way. So
Thanks. That was fun. Yeah, you got to see the debut of the medley. Kevin's been talking about doing a medley of songs that really meant a lot to him
yeah,
uh, in the
growing up,
60s.
right?
I mean,
Yeah,
and we've talked about this for years, and we're always like, I don't know, put together it. And finally he said, look, we're doing this medley on this date. Let's pull it
let's
together.
just
And
do
it was
it.
so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so fun. I mean, just and to be out there, and it was a beautiful day, and
Oh man, yeah.
everyone was having fun in the audience. It was just perfect. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't get any better, right? So
Nope.
it doesn't. Yeah, let's keep in touch. I'll send you a couple of tunes, a few tunes from that
That'd be
Italian
great.
artist, and I look forward to your projects that you've just talked about coming up in the new year. I'll make sure
Yep.
to check those out, and yeah, I really do hope to see you again soon, or sooner or later.
Yep.
And make sure to rock my T-shirt on the next show.
Dude, I've been wearing it.
You have?
Oh yeah. I
You
wear it
like
all
it?
the time. I love it. Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you.
Very unique.
What's that? Sorry.
I said very unique.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always try to be like to be original, with the things that I come up with. So
Yeah.
hopefully I succeeded with that.
You did it, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you again for doing this. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so very
My
much.
pleasure.
Thank you. Bye, Park.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.